Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 6:30 and I'm calling this meeting to order. As authorized by Section 551.071 of the Texas Government Code, this meeting may be convened into closed executive session for the purposes of seeking confidential legal advice from the city attorney on any item on the agenda at any time during the meeting. The City of Bastrop reserves the right to reconvene, recess, or realign the regular session or called executive session or order of business at any time prior to adjournment. So tonight we have Kendall Haas and Chloe Day. Kendall is president and Chloe is vice president of City Council at Cedar Creek High School, and they will be leading us in the pledges. If you would please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
And if you would please remain standing, Pastor Johnny Bond with the Bastrop Church of Christ will lead us in our invocation.
Would you pray with me, please? Heavenly Father, as elected officials, city employees, public service and citizens gather tonight to discuss and decide on budget and other resolutions for the efficient function of the city of Bastrop, we approach you seeking your wisdom, your foresight, and your patience. I pray tonight that all parties would consider your command to love our neighbors as ourselves and endeavor to practice that command. I pray for your grace and mercy to be evident in each person in this room this evening. I pray for the city of Bastrop, Father, to continue to experience growth while continuing to foster community among all citizens. May tonight's meeting be useful for these purposes. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you, Johnny. I really appreciate that. Okay, we're on to presentations, and it's time for the mayor's report. And it was not in the package this week, and I have an explanation for that. I was at training the end of last week, and we got some wires crossed, but I did do a mayor's report. I wanted to do something a little bit different this evening. It's been a long day. That a lot of times I go over all the meetings I've been to and all the meetings I'm planning on going to, and I'll try to hit the highlights on that. But I wanted to do a little minute with the mayor. We're going to do a little trivia contest of sorts. When you purchase something in the city of Bastrop, whether you're a citizen in Bastrop or not, does everybody pretty much has an idea of what the sales tax rate is? Any guesses from the audience? Hearing none, it's 8.25. So what you may not realize is your lovely state takes 6.25% of that. So every item, if you've paid sales tax on it, 6.25% goes to the state. 0.5% goes to Bastrop County. 1% goes to the city's general fund, and 0.5% goes to the Economic Development Corporation. And that has you paying 2% local. That's the max. It's likely to not change. But this is a little trivia 101 on where does the EDC get their money and how is it funded. So it is 0.5% of every sales tax item that's paid. They don't get money from property taxes. They don't get money from anything else except sales tax within the city limits. So when they present later on tonight and they talk about incentives and refunds, know that all of that is funded from that 0.5% of sales tax. So that is a little Civics 101 brought to you by the mayor. I wanted to do a couple of shout outs. We had several staff that participated in the American Red Cross Emergency Shelter Training, which is one of those things that you don't really think about until, oh my gosh, you're in an emergency and you need that training. So staff, if you participated, would you raise your hand? Lots of folks that participated. Thank you very much. I appreciate that because I know that with our city manager, your daily duties did not reduce while you were at training, and you still got everything done, and I appreciate that. I also want to let the public know that the library has a 3D printer. And I see some surprised faces, so I'm glad to share that information. And they are going to start doing some programs in September. So if you're an adult and you would like to find out some more about 3D printers, or if you have kids and you'd like them to be gainfully employed, you might look into having them check out 3D printers. And I have not seen Chief Wobus, so, but I'm still going to give him a shout out. He was accepted into the National Fire Academy, so let's give Chief Wobus a round of applause. Speaking of the fire department, they helped the Bastrop River Rally on Sunday, and I appreciate them doing that. And I know I have several moms and grandmas that are super happy that the splash pad has been resurfaced with a non-slip surface, and it's a really pretty color, and that's an inside joke between Trey and I because I picked the color because he didn't care. And then also for my friends at Hunter's Crossing, the drainage work has started. The contractor's out there and working, so if you don't live in that part of Hunter's Crossing, I just wanted you to be aware that that was going on. And I also want to tell you that on Thursday, July 27th, I went to the Riverside Grove community meeting. They're thinking about starting a neighborhood watch program. They're getting organized for that. If your neighborhood doesn't have one, I would encourage you to contact Officer McIntyre, or I'm sure Chief Adcock can help you know who to contact. But Neighborhood Watch, it's a really great way to take care of your community and get out and know your neighbors. So I participated in that meeting. On Friday the 28th, I went to the countywide best breakfast, and I also did a really cool thing, which there was not a very flattering picture in the paper, but it was my fault. At Friendship Bible Baptist Church, they provide free daycare for the kids in the neighborhood, and the YMCA comes and does exercises with those kids. So I went and met all the kids and talked to them, and they will be here the first meeting in September to lead us in the pledges. So there was a really neat group of kids I got to spend some time with. On last Tuesday, several of us went to the State Park public hearing, and I really want to thank Brent Leisure for coming to that. He really provided some history and was very helpful, and Councilmember Jones may have something she wants to add about that. Several of us went to the chamber luncheon, and then a very neat thing that Councilmember Jones and Councilmember Ennis, I guess I would say this side of the dais, went to newly elected official training by Texas Municipal League in San Antonio. It was a really good day and a half training. And I think we all agree that we got some really good information from that. We came rushing back on Friday in time to participate in First Friday Art Walk, which was really fun. And then on Saturday morning, I think most of us were in the parade. And that was a great time, and then some of us went on over to the convention center afterwards. I owe an apology to Miss O'Brien. I had a house full of company, so I did not make the cowboy crawl, but I understand that it was quite fun by the cowboys that were crawling that day. When we were at training, we got a really great quote, and I wanted to share it with y'all. I thought that it would ring true. Some of you may think it's funny, some of you may not, but I wanted to share it with you. The art of government is conducting business in such a manner as to satisfy the irritated without irritating the satisfied. So with that, Councilmember Jones, do you have anything with your report?
The rodeo was this weekend, homecoming. Oh, it was fun. It was great. And saw Judge Dugan there. We were doing our volunteer time, directing cars and people. It was really a good time. And I would like to thank everybody that worked on that to put it together, because it's just what, being in Bastrop for a while, that's just what it's all about. It was great. I did also go to the meeting for the state park, and we're working on trying to find a really happy median with some of our citizens in the state park for what's going on up there. They did a great presentation. They have some really good ideas. It was very interesting, and thank you. Councilmember Ennis?
I have two items. I urge all of our residents to visit the museum and see Bastrop Then and Now, a student-led project prepared by the Colorado River Collegiate Academy, the early college high school program of BISD. Over the past school year, 58 freshman scholars discovered local history and culture by interviewing long-term residents to learn about their experiences growing up and living here in Bastrop. Like NPR's StoryCorps, the students interviewed and then examined the stories of numerous Bastrop residents. They followed up by conducting historical research and provide depth to these personal histories. Academy English teacher Manny Pena and social studies research instructor Megan Brandon have said, "It's our hope that those who experience this exhibit will not only learn about the story of Bastrop as a community, but their own personal histories as well." The project was made possible through a grant provided by the Bastrop Education Foundation and support of Bastrop BISD. The second item I'd like to discuss is, and I would particularly like to draw your attention to, is a unique opportunity to celebrate the diversity of our little town. On June 15, 1948, the League of United Latin American Citizens, joined by the American GI Forum of Texas and 3 prominent Latin American attorneys, led by attorney Gustavo Garcia, filed suit against BISD and 4 other Texas public school districts in U.S. District Court for the Western District of Texas, challenging the segregation of Minerva Delgado and 20 other Mexican-American children. This began the case of Delgado et al. Versus Bastrop Independent School District et al. In their complaint for the Mexican-American parents, the attorneys argued that the school districts had prohibited, barred, and excluded Mexican-American children from attending public school with other white school children, that's in quotes, in violation of the equal protection of the laws guaranteed by the U.S. Constitution's 14th Amendment. Eventually, the court ruled in the plaintiff's favor and ordered the cessation of this separation. In the end, this decision helped to undermine the rigid segregation of Mexican Americans in Texas schools. Needless to say, the decision was a defining event for education in our city, our state, and yes, even our nation. On September the 23rd, the city of Bastrop, joined by Bastrop County and BISD, along with the Texas Historical Commission, will celebrate this defining court decision. On that day, we will commemorate the MENA School, the Mexican-American school before the decision, by dedicating the Texas Historical Commission historical marker at the school site. Immediately following, the city will unveil our new Delgado Park, honoring the participants in that historic decision. I've been asked by the mayor and city manager to work with our partners to coordinate plans for this event. We're moving along well, but as you can imagine, there are a lot of moving parts. So I ask anyone who has questions regarding the celebration to give me a call. My number is 512-718-7841, and it's on the city website. The event will begin at the Civic Center across the street at 10 a.m. on the 23rd, and I hope you will all make plans to be there. It will be a great celebration and a chance for Bastrop to truly display our strength as a community. That's all I have, Madam.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Ennis, and I just want to personally thank you for all of the time and effort that you have put into that. He's saying a few moving parts, and he means a few thousand moving at light speed, so he is really doing the yeoman's work and greatly, greatly appreciated by all of us. Thank you so much. Mayor Pro Tem Schiff.
I just wanted to add to your sales tax class, was that 101, I think? Yes. When she was talking about the 0.5% or the half-cent tax that the EDC collects, that we collect for the EDC, that money is very limited in how it can be used. And so when you see some of the projects that will be presented tonight and the monies that are involved, those monies can't just go to improve your neighborhood or whatever. This is money that's set aside specifically. It was voted in back back in the early 90s, I think, when it got started. But it's very specifically dedicated money toward economic development. It can include some limited infrastructure and some quality of life issues, but it's not monies that can just go into the general fund in the city.
Thank you for adding to the class. And also, it's important to note that those rules come from the state legislature. Those aren't rules that we make up. Those are rules that come from the state, and they're the same for all cities to use their economic development tax. Councilmember Nelson.
I wish I had something to add, but I was on vacation, so I have nothing to add.
So tell us all where you went on vacation.
I got to see Jeff Bagwell inducted to the Baseball Hall of Fame. That was pretty outstanding.
I knew he wanted to say that, so I gave him a shout. Councilmember Peterson?
Excuse me, just briefly, I just want to say thanks to all the city staff for making the homecoming parade a very nice success. It was a great day. I think everyone enjoyed themselves and had a good day. Thanks to you, Judge Dugan, for doing such a great job of announcing for us out there in the heat. I started to give you a cap, but that's the only one I had. But thank you so very much. But I enjoyed my day, just riding the Harleys with our city manager and I'll call her name in a minute.
Travis, that's who I'm trying to think of. But I was able to get a couple of Harleys out to ride in the parade with us this year, and that was an outstanding time just to ride through the parade with those guys. And thank you all so very much. It was a nice weekend.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. I'm really glad so many of us participated. Okay, that's the end of council member reports. City manager, anything to report tonight?
no ma'am.
She's reporting that she's really glad we have a budget. Moving on to 5A, receive briefing on city manager's submitted budget for fiscal year 2018 as required by the city's charter.
Yes. There you go. No, I'm gonna just, well, we'll go page by page. There we go. Mayor and council, the charter requires that I present a budget to you 30 days before adoption. And by doing so tonight, and the budget being adopted on the 26th of September, we more than meet that obligation. For perspective, I want to say this. One of the more interesting things about budgets, and I teach a class in the Certified Public Manager's curriculum, and I say budget. It's not just about the numbers. And the truth of the matter is municipal budgets really have nothing to do with the numbers. They're all about what the funding mechanisms provide in the way of services and programs to our citizens. And so I like to say that while there are really a lot of numbers on the page, the numbers don't matter. And so with that perspective, I want to say that this document represents the most important things staff will collectively work on all year. It represents the most important decision you will make all year. Because it is, as I said, the funding conduit to all of the programs and services that we will provide our citizens over the course of fiscal year 2018. I have been city manager here for 5 short months. And it has been an extendedly long journey. It has been amazing, though, the amount of ground that I think that we have covered. I'm not going to stand behind that because I think I'm reverberating. One of the things that I really want to acknowledge is that the fiscal year 2018 budget represents a starting point. And it's a starting point because there are a number of strategic elements that need to be considered, financial opportunities we need to take advantage of, and then we really need to focus on economic development and community development. So in that context, I want to acknowledge some of the strategic elements. Since fiscal year 2017's budget was adopted this time last year, this community has embarked on and adopted the Bastrop Comprehensive Plan 2016-2036. I read this document as I was interviewing for this position, and I have now read this document again as I prepared the budget, and I am continue to be very impressed with the amount of energy, vision, and foresight that this document provided. There's a chart in the budget memo that you've been provided that covers some of the comprehensive plan survey results. And I thought that it was very important to acknowledge these because 975 city residents participated for a response rate of nearly 14%. And regardless of your city, that's very good participation. And there are a number of charts that I wanted to cover. One dealt with the satisfaction of city services. And this particular slide comments that they were very satisfied with our library services, our community events and festivals, and our trash and recycling. They were least satisfied with senior programs, senior services and programs, street maintenance and repair, and our water quality. In the context of housing and neighborhoods, the real important issues, in their opinion, were providing additional trails in close proximity, improving the condition of our streets and sidewalks, and improving or adding sidewalks and a place to walk. From a parks and recreation perspective, they were very interested in enhancing things that were available in our parks. And traffic, from a transportation standpoint, they were interested in addressing safety, traffic congestion, and street condition and maintenance. So the comprehensive plan appears in the budget memo and some of the choices that are made extensively throughout that document because this was, in my opinion, the best way to find out what our citizens needed very quickly in order to make some of the more important decisions. In addition, I am very pleased and continue to be impressed by the level of energy that you as a council show relative to your vision and mission statements. Back in July, we had a retreat and you modified the statement included in the comprehensive plan to make it your own. And the vision statement now reads, Bastrop, a welcoming community with the compassion for our diversity, a tapestry of people, arts, structures, preserving our history and character while embracing progress around our unique environment. The mission statement that you adopted was to continuously strive to provide efficient and proactive services that enhance the quality of life and achieve the vision. And both of these really define direction and provide purpose for us as an organization that, again, were incorporated in these decisions. Council went on to select 9 areas, or focus areas, that really are fundamental elements vital to the successful execution of your vision and your mission statement. And these are fiscal responsibility, managed growth, communication, uniquely Bastrop, organizational excellence, economic vitality, community safety, unique environment, and multimodal mobility. Because we spend a lot of time attempting to prioritize our priorities, I requested at that meeting that you collectively reach consensus on what you deemed were your priorities. Chart 5 in the budget memo lists your priorities. Staff, when we have our retreat at the end of September, will incorporate your list of priorities as we make some strategic decisions relative to the operations of the organization. So from a strategic standpoint, just to summarize, I'll utilize the comprehensive plan, the vision and mission statement adopted by council, your focus areas, as well as your list of priorities, and making the decisions as to what to include in my budget for your consideration. Another element that needs to be considered is the financial opportunities available to us. And I start with a chart that talks about how tax entities distribute the taxes paid by our citizens. And I always hear from citizens that we pay too much in the way of taxes, and my comment is always, I wish I got all you paid. Unfortunately, that's rarely the case. In our case, almost 52% of the taxes that are actually paid by our citizens go to the school district. 23% go to the county, and we're number 3 on that list with just under 22% of the taxes actually paid coming to the city of Bastrop. So I want to start with, for those of you that think you pay too much in the way of taxes, it's not coming to the city. That's my preface to you on that one. The next financial opportunity, and I use opportunity here as tongue-in-cheek, is really beginning to dive into the makeup of the general fund revenues. Sales tax in fiscal year 2017, the year that the budget year we're currently in, sales tax represents 45% of the city's revenue. Now, that drops in fiscal year 28 proposed budget to 41% due to increase in building and development fees that y'all have indicated your willingness to support. But here's the concern that I have relative to the lack of diversity. Property taxes account for, in both cases, whether we're talking fiscal year 17 or fiscal year 18, 31% of the city's makeup of revenue. And that's very scary to me because that's the most stable of all of the revenue sources available. So when you look at what is a penny of property tax value worth, it's worth $86,300 in revenue. So let me start by saying there's no proposed tax increase in this budget. So if a council were to choose to increase our tax rate to 60 cents, it would only generate $310,680. That's not a lot of money given some of the challenges and needs that we need. So that leads me to economic development and community development. There are 2 budgetary goals that I have for this proposed budget, and I don't anticipate these goals changing anytime soon. And the first one is we need to position the city to diversify dependence on sales tax and grow property tax valuations through development and annexation so that we can maintain our current infrastructure while building new. And I hear from a lot of people, why are we worried about growing when we're not taking care of the infrastructure we've got? That's a fair point. We're going to be talking in the fall about wastewater infrastructure that's going to be very expensive. And while that will benefit growth, it will also ensure that our toilets continue to flush and our water continues to run. So at this point in time, some of our infrastructure has outlived its useful expected life. And as I like to say, we're fast approaching getting the gooey out of it. And at some point in time, you've got to replace the infrastructure because there's just no more gooey. So we'll be focusing the organization next year to be a very good partner with Sean and his team in the Economic Development Corporation, because that's how we will collectively grow our property tax valuations as a community. The second piece to this is growing our sales tax. The very serious and I'm going to use the word threat here, that we have is that 41% of our budget is tied to sales tax, and it's flat. It's not growing. And every time the mayor and I go to a meeting where there is a representative in Elgin, I cringe. While I am absolutely delighted for their growth, they talk for minutes and minutes and minutes. You just were like, shut up already, okay? We got it, it's growing. But as Elgin continues to grow, what that means is that they have opportunities in Elgin and they no longer need to come to Bastrop. And Smithville is absolutely growing the same way, and we absolutely are supportive of our sister cities in the region and know that we'll collectively be stronger by doing that. But what that means is that we've got to offset our number one source of revenue and ensure that we can stabilize it, because it takes time to grow the property tax. And the best way to do that is through tourism. And we're very blessed that we have a number of generators or attractors already here that will make that possible. And so I talk about one of the budgetary goals as being offsetting Smithville and Elgin's growth and impact on our sales tax with increased tourism. And I call that economic development because we need to become a destination for Hyatt Lost Pines Resort excursions that currently go to Austin. And the Hyatt Lost Pines Resort is rated by AAA as a 4-diamond destination. And if you read what the definition of AAA 4-diamond designation is, the last 3 words are attention to detail. And so as a community, we really need to pay a lot of attention to the detail. We need to consider third-party transportation to bring visitors to downtown from all of our hotels, not just the Hyatt. And then we need curb appeal with some sitting spots downtown. And so there's several opportunities in this budget to address not only the economic development piece of the equation, but as well as our community development. Now, one of the things that I will say is on page 12 of the budget in chart 10 is probably the single most important chart in the entire budget, in my opinion. All of the recommended programs and services that we'll spend time over the next 6 weeks discussing are in this chart by focus area that council has determined are important to ensure our success in completing our vision and our mission. The first area is fiscal responsibility, and that's preparing and managing the budget. Fiduciary responsibility. That's the definition council gave that. There are 2 things that fall under this chart that I want to talk about. The first is increased building and development fees. In June, staff made a presentation about how out of date our development and subdivision fees are. In fact, they haven't been amended since 1995. At that time, we were under the 1991 building code. That's a building code that's now defunct, and we are now operating under much newer codes. I think the last update's 2009. So what we find is by not having touched our fees in 22 years, these codes require way more detail, way more inspections, and essentially the citizens of Bastrop are subsidizing the development process to the tune of about 3.5 cents. So council, as a part of their priority list, have indicated that they want us to amend our financial policies to ensure that fees cover cost of service in the future. So included in this budget is the increase of building and development fees to cover the cost of service and reduce the subsidy. The second is the creation of an innovation fund, and I'll talk about that fund in more detail and the components in it as I go. But essentially what the Innovation Fund is a standalone separate fund where one-time fund balance is put in that fund for transparency perspective. It allows us to leave that money for perhaps multiple budget years because sometimes we can't get a project done in a year, so that money stays in that fund, very clearly marked as to what it's for. And it also then allows us to have better data going forward to create performance measures and trends by departments. Oftentimes when we plug one-time uses of money in departments, then it kind of screws up the trend analysis when you look to the past and say, well, what's that big hiccup? And nobody can remember what it looks like. So for a lot of reasons, putting those one-time expenditures in a separate fund adds to the transparency. The second category is managed growth, and Council defines managed growth as to plan for and manage growth, development, and redevelopment to maintain Bastrop's unique feel and character. There are two items under this for inclusion in this budget, and both have to deal with staffing. The number one item on your list of priorities was adding staffing, adding capacity to the organization. I have said on numerous occasions that we are an extremely lean organization. We spend most of our day providing programs and services, and there's very little capacity for us to be strategic and to do things outside of the normal course of business. And our to-do list is long. I like to tell people I've only been here 120 days and I got a decade worth of work. I mean, it's job security at its finest. So we need to add some capacity to begin to deal with that so we can deal with the economic development and the community development opportunities. So the first position that I have included in the budget is a full-time planning and zoning director position. Right now, Wesley Brandon is filling both the full-time planning and zoning director position and serving as our city engineer. And we've got as much work on the engineering side as we do on the planning and zoning side, and as a result of that, there's not enough of Wesley to go around. So we need to add some bandwidth there because a lot of the challenges that we have deal with internal processes and reviewing codes. And another challenge in the context of this is the fact that Bastrop cannot be developed from a one-size-fits-all approach. I've talked before about how the west side of the community is flat and has more of a urban feel to it. And then you come downtown and you've got preservation because we've got 71 historical buildings that date back to pre-1900. So it's all about preservation and life safety. And then you go east of 95 and you get in rolling hills and beautiful vistas and the Houston Toad. And all three of those have unique development opportunities to them. So we can't build one set of codes and expect them to work. You literally have to have three sets of codes that you can interpret to ensure we maximize all of the things that make Bastrop great. So we need the capacity of a full-time planning and zoning director to do that. And then I'm also asking for an assistant public works director position. We are now to a place, if we're going to manage all of the required maintenance, whether it's streets, whether it's parks, whether it's the water and sewer fund, whether it's the drainage fund, whatever the case may be, it is too much to ask Trey to deal with the operations and strategize for the future. So we need Trey focused on the future, and we need an assistant public works director to help deal with the operations, help build the maintenance plans so that they get executed, and help with the day-to-day activities. So again, we can take advantage of our economic development and community development opportunities. So under managed growth, we have two positions, full-time planning and zoning director and assistant public works director. Under communications, council defined that as support and enhance open two-way communication between the city and its residents and business. Right now, Colin is our resident videographer, picture photographer, very, very creative, but he spends half of his time in information technology and half of his time in information technology. And so part of the challenge we have is educating our customers on the value of the services that we provide, and that comes from communication. Council has been abundantly clear that we need to do more communication. We need to take advantage of our television station. So we're putting a full-time employee, i.e. Colin, full-time in the film and broadcasting department. What that is going to allow us to do is to spend 2 weeks out of every month putting together a television program. So Colin and I will be doing that. We'll be interviewing departments. We'll be interviewing people in the community and council, working hard to educate our community on the value of its government. We will also spend 2 weeks out of the month building a newsletter, social media, the print side of things. And the interesting thing about local government is a one-size-fits-all approach does not work. So we're going to have to get creative in how we choose to do that. Under uniquely Bastrop, that's to maintain and enhance our historic community feel by leveraging the unique combination of community, cultural, and recreational assets that make Bastrop a special place to live and work. And I am going to list the items under this, but I'm going to wait and discuss this when I get to the hotel motel tax, because most of the things under this come out of this fund. We're proposing additional part-time hours at the convention center for booking 7 days a week. One of the challenges that we've identified in recruiting conventions and trade shows that would fit our market to Bastrop is sometimes they need a Sunday, and we're not open on a Sunday. So we are going to have a pool of hours that when that needs to be a requirement, they'll be available to meet that need. We're going to increase, let me say this. We have one position that is vacant that we're going to eliminate and reallocate to 2 part-time positions that are in the hot fund and make those 2 full-time, so it's a wash. One is we have a part-time employee that is involved in the setup of the convention center. We're going to make that person full-time. So that will allow us to work at the convention center and downtown, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then we're going to increase the part-time administrative assistant that currently works with Main Street to full-time, and that assistant will work with Main Street, the convention center, and Team Bastrop, our destination marketing organization. We also have provided funding for Visit Bastrop, our new destination marketing group. We are going to be approving a contract with them, and there is a 50% target. This budget has that 50% target funding for them and wayfinding signage. We know in the next year we're going to have to help people come take advantage of all of our opportunities here at Bastrop to get them off of 71. We don't know what that looks like, but we know we need it, so we've included it. So we'll talk about uniquely Bastrop when we get to the hotel occupancy fund. Organizational excellence, and that's organizational governance, progressive operational efficiency, employee and citizen volunteer recognition. The word efficient shows up not only in the mission statement, but in our focus areas and our list of priorities. So that is something that we've already talked about as an organization, and we'll be spending quite a bit of time in our work plan figuring out how we're going to do that. But I have a number of opportunities included in this budget to get us started. And the first is salary increases for employees. There is a 2% cost of living increase scheduled for October 1st, and then 2.5% on their anniversary. That has been the standard practice of the city of Bastrop for a number of years, and I think speaks highly of the quality of staff that you've been able to recruit and retain. We are a service organization. We are nothing if our employees aren't well taken care of and provide that great service. The next is a full-time IT systems administrator position. To me, the biggest challenge that government collectively as a whole faces is staying relevant relative to technology when it now changes every 18 months. And literally, products are thought, created, go to market, and become antiquated in less than 3 years. And we know that by the collection of stuff we consistently buy and then buy more of. Cities have a very hard time staying up with technology, yet our youngest customers who are becoming our customers have never lived life without technology. And they find us seriously old school and antiquated if we don't have that technology. So, more and more, every system we have requires technology and expertise, and it's getting to be more than Andreas and half of Colin can take care of. So, we have an IT systems administrator position under organizational excellence to ensure all of the technology you count on for us to deliver services such as flushing toilets and things like that work when they need it. We need to maintain our servers and replace them. We have some that are at the end of their useful life, and we have a lot of federal and state regulations that are non-negotiable, and we can't risk our servers crashing and going down. So we need those to stay up. We also have included a council chamber upgrade for vote links that will essentially change out our microphones. We'll have an automatic voting system so that the people at home can see that. Sometimes we have issues with sound. We're hopeful that these things address that. We're also including NeoGov software. The industry standard is you go out on the internet, you search, you find a job, you hit a button, you fill out an application, it automatically goes in, you get wonderful email response as they follow up, and then perhaps you get an interview and you do that online and you get the job and they send you some more electronic information and you onboard and you move on, except in Bastrop. Bastrop has a Word document application that we're going to make you print off, and you can mail in, you can fax it in, or you can bring it in. Well, Bastrop is not the center of the universe, and so we really kind of need to update our HR process to help with the recruiting. But the flip side of NeoGov from an efficiency standpoint is when it's not electronic, that means staff has to print those applications off so that they can then pass them to the departments that need to review them so they can make handwritten paper notes, and then we get to shuffle the paper back to HR to put in the file because we have to maintain it. And when we get ready to hire those employees and onboard them, that's more paper because it's not electronic. So for a very inexpensive one-time cost, we're going to add phenomenal capacity in the organization in our hiring and employment management by purchasing NeoGov. The last item under this category is our first annual volunteer recognition banquet. One of the things that council has been very clear about is the importance of our volunteers and how we could not do it without everybody that volunteers. And we need to take time to recognize them special. So we have funding in the budget for the first annual volunteer recognition. We'll be talking about that more at the next council meeting, but this will be an opportunity for us to recognize all of our boards, recognize the service the hours, and really put into perspective what our volunteers mean to us as a community. The next category is economic vitality, and that's to create sustainability by leveraging tourism, infrastructure renewal and investment, enhancing public-private partnerships, efficient, there's that word again, efficient planning and development processes, fostering an inclusive and diverse environment that encourages entrepreneurial ventures. There are a number of items in this. The first is a foreman for the utility system. One of the challenges that we have is we have limited supervision in Public Works, and Public Works is over everything. They are our go-to. If there's nobody else to call, you call Public Works and they get it done. Well, we now need to really focus on our utility system, our operational processes, and make sure that we're maintaining that system that is critical to our health and safety. And so we need a foreman that's specific to that. That position would obviously be paid for out of the Water and Sewer Fund. One of the real significant needs in the community is street maintenance. The big question when you have needs for street maintenance is, where do you start? What's it need? How much does it cost? And I'm very big on building plans, and plans that's built on quality information. So we're proposing that a pavement condition index assessment be conducted on every street in Bastrop. And what that will do is evaluate the streets, and it will essentially build a report for us, and it will have whether the street needs to be rehabilitated, does it need crack sealing, how long is it, and it will provide extremely accurate information and grade each street so we can put together a street maintenance plan. We can bring that to council and tell you specifically how much of each type of street maintenance needs to be conducted, how much it will be. And then the scores will help us prioritize based on need. So that is really a critical piece to begin to resolve the street maintenance question that we need to address. The next item is the creation of a drainage fund for increased maintenance. We have talked about that at a budget workshop, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Partnership with Keep Bastrop County Beautiful to create an Adopt a Street program. Remember when I said we needed to become a AAA 4-diamond destination with attention to detail? We need a lot of partners out there helping us pick up litter, doing landscaping through parklets and those kinds of things. And Keep Bastrop County Beautiful was instrumental in winning a $130,000 grant from the Governor's Award. So they are very excited and passionate about that, and we need to motivate or capitalize on their motivation. And then we heard a presentation on household hazardous waste, and that is included in the budget in partnership with Bastrop County and the City of Smithfield. Also, under community safety, defined as keep citizens, businesses, and visitors safe, we have a number of items. The first one is very important from my perspective, and that is the purchase of a computer-aided dispatch known as CAD, records management package for the police and fire departments. We contract with Bastrop County to dispatch, and Bastrop County Dispatch and the Sheriff's Office use a program called Tyler Technology. And they have MDCs, mobile data computers, in their cars, and so dispatch is able to take the call, and with the push of a button, shove a tremendous amount of life safety information out to the officer in the car. That information could make huge difference in how the response is handled and the outcome of that. Currently, we don't have that. So it requires dispatch to communicate with our officers via the radio. And because they're used to pushing that out to their biggest customer, sometimes we are left with limited information. It will also make our records management functions very efficient, because now we won't have to input a lot of data. It will automatically populate. So back to that word efficient, there are a lot of life safety and efficiencies to be gained from this. I have asked Chief Adcock to provide a presentation on this at our budget workshop on Monday, because I really want citizens to appreciate the importance of this and the value that this investment brings. We know that one of the important things on the priority list is increasing the availability of full-time fire department, particularly having a station on the west side of town. That is a big endeavor, and it will be years in the making. So a first step will be to add some additional funding for firefighters. Currently, we have 2 part-time firefighters on staff Monday through Friday for 10 hours. And the thought process behind that is a lot of our volunteers work out of the area, work in Austin, and they're not here during the day. And that's a good thought process. But as we've grown, one of the other issues on your priority list is to deal with traffic congestion. Well, a lot of our volunteers live on the west side of the river, and it's very difficult for them to get across the river to Station 1, get the equipment, and then respond. So we're advocating increasing the hours of part-time firefighters to 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. And that way, they'll be available to take the equipment to where the need is, and then the volunteers can respond accordingly. We also are funding equipment for our volunteer first responders group. In visiting with Chief Adcock, they play a very critical role. Sometimes it takes the ambulance services some time to get on scene. And for those of you that are familiar with the medical service know that that first hour is critical. The sooner you can start working on a patient, the better the odds are. Chief Adcock is very impressed with their response time, and he recognizes if they don't show up, we are there and we will have to fill in. So this particular group is asking for specific equipment, AEDs and Motorola radios, so that they can communicate with our first responders. So we have included that because of the community benefit of that life-saving equipment. We talked back in June about utilizing the red light camera fund, and we have money for sign replacement to improve reflectivity of our signage. Again, striping to increase pedestrian and driver safety, and then sidewalks to increase pedestrian safety, and I'll cover those more in detail in just a few minutes. Unique environment, continued beautification and natural areas, green space, parks, river, and landscaping. We have included money for contracting out mowing for rights-of-way, facilities, and park mowing. And I'll touch on that while I'm here. If I go back to the AAA 4 Diamond, attention to detail, we have a lot of TxDOT right-of-way in Bastrop. We have 71, 150, 21, and 95 just in the downtown area. And the state does not subscribe to any local ordinance mowing schedule. They mow 3 times a year, whether it needs it or not. And so we have the railroad that rides through town, and they too have right-of-way, and they mow it probably less frequency than TxDOT does. And we have right-of-way mowing. So whether it's our citizen or our visitors, they are not discriminate as who owns it. They just see that it needs to be mowed. So if we're going to up our attention to detail, we really need to start with our mowing. And I feel that it's important because I'm not willing to enforce code enforcement when I know that the city is a violator as well. It seems slightly hypocritical. So I want us to get our house in order so that we can be good neighbors and give that attention to detail. Emphasis on downtown landscape and litter and additional special event support to enhance the tourist experience. I'll cover that when I deal with the HOT fund. And then last but certainly not least, the multimodal mobility to improve mobility for all modes of transit and manage traffic congestion. This is funding for sidewalks, funding for the River Trail project, funding for increased carts service, as well as a consulting fee for our State Park Trail. And I just want to remind people about the survey we saw in the comprehensive plan from our citizens who said, more sidewalks, more trails, more sidewalks, more trails. So we have taken that to heart. Quickly, in the general fund, the significant piece of the revenue going up really has to deal with license and permits, and that's the building and inspection fees. We anticipate that it will generate about $340,000 in new money in fiscal year 2018 to cover the development expenses associated with that cost of service. Relative to expenses, I have covered the things in the areas of focus areas, but in the general fund, those include salary and benefits, the new positions, the Director of Planning and Zoning, Assistant Public Works, IT Administrator, Film and Broadcast, and then last but not least is funding for an associate judge position. Currently, our judge, Charlotte Haynes, works 7 days a week. Hines, I'm sorry. Thank you, Mayor. I think one thing and say another. My husband's always correcting me about that. But anyway, our judge works 7 days a week, and she does it with a lot of love and passion for her position, but she's growing tired, and rightly so. So we have added money in the budget, and we'll be talking to council at the next council meeting to put together a request for qualifications to get a couple of associate judges so that it's not a burden on any one judge to work the weekends, so that our judge has a life that she certainly earned and entitled to. Under the Innovation Fund, again, that's one-time money that's being funded through excess fund balance from not only the general fund, but from Bastrop Power and Light. Included in the Innovation Fund is the CAD RMS system, server replacements, the design consulting fee for the State Park Trail. That particular project was funded in fiscal year 2017. However, when the building fees were presented in the fall, for a myriad of reasons, they were delayed, and funding did not offset the expense of some of the development costs that we've been subsidizing. And so we used the money allocated for this project to pay for those additional fees, and so we need to reallocate money in fiscal 18 to design our portion of the State Park Trail. Delgado Park is on the agenda tonight for the purchase of some playground equipment that y'all have funded through a budget amendment, and there's money in the budget next year for a parking lot. The pavement condition index study we've talked about, the fire department staffing, the rights of way mowing, and facility and park mowing. I do want to note that there are 2 positions in the parks that are currently vacant, and we are advocating that the money for those 2 positions go toward a mowing for contract for mowing. We recognize that there are some real efficiencies, and that's something that the private sector does very well and is very efficient. And by outsourcing the mowing, it will now allow our staff to focus on maintenance and servicing our parks. Cart funding, we have put $20,000 in the budget for carts. We have noted that we will be meeting with officials of CART to put together an interlocal agreement, and it will include bus stops and accountability measures, and that will have to come to council for approval. So just because you have appropriated the money, there's still lots of work to be done here. There is $35,000 in the budget for designing a skate park, which is a top priority for the park board. I spoke about NeoGov, the council chambers vote link system. The water wastewater fund is one that we won't spend much time on in a part of this budget process because we're waiting for some necessary information on maintenance of some of our existing facilities that will significantly impact some of the answers on how we manage that. So we'll deal with that in the fall with the expectation that any rate adjustment would occur January 1st of 2018. Bastrop Power and Light is seeing a 2.5% increase in revenues. This fund has a 35% fund balance, and at the end of 2017, they have a 56.4% fund balance. So we are recommending some expenditures out of their one-time fund balance. The first of which is Christmas lights. We're calling it the River of Lights. One of the challenges that we know we have is getting tourists to downtown every weekend. And Christmas is an opportunity to really showcase all of the benefits, and a River of Lights would certainly add value to that. The innovation funds, BP&L is making a contribution of $256,500 into that fund to pay for the things we've talked about. And then one of the things that I think is very important is to begin to appropriately address some of our community events. I have never worked in a city that didn't celebrate July 4th. I've never worked in a city that did not celebrate Christmas. And Juneteenth is another one in my Texas cities that have been very important. It's very difficult to always get tourists to come to events that are community events. And so we're going to fund the community events, a portion of the Patriotic Festival that does not qualify under HOT, the Christmas lights, thank you, Mayor, and Juneteenth. And all of that will go into the HOT fund in our hospitality and downtown department, so we can make sure that we have those festivals. And then a $100,000 transfer to our vehicle and equipment replacement funds. We are proposing $119,000 worth of community support funding. And when we talk about our funds next week, I'll go into detail as to what is being funded and why, and some aren't being funded and why. Oh, I'm not keeping up. I long since quit keeping up. Thank you, Mayor. The Hotel Motel Fund, let's talk about that just a little bit, because I am very excited about the Hotel Motel Tax Fund. Haven't always been excited about this fund, but I have now gotten excited about this fund. We included some information from the Bastrop Comprehensive Plan that really underscores the theme of tourists and how important tourism is to our local economy. Sean likes to say that's the purest form of economic development when it comes to tourism. And we recognize that we need to start treating the HOT fund like the general fund. Every element of that HOT fund must be maximized, because if we are going to offset what I consider to be a significant threat to our number one source of revenue, which is sales tax, which we know is flat and declining, if we're going to stabilize that with tourism, we have to use the hotel occupancy fund to its absolute maximum capacity. So we are recommending the creation of a hospitality and downtown department, and that's going to provide a more strategic approach to the HOT funds. Currently, funding is provided for Main Street, funding is provided for the Convention Center, funding is provided for the Visit Bastrop. and other arts groups, and each one of them have their fund, and as a result, they pretty much have acted independently. Well, it is critical now that we all get on board singing the same sheet of music. So, as a result of that operationally, we have had a staff retreat, and the Main Street Director, Sarah O'Brien, the Convention Center Director, Kathy Danielson, and the Visit Bastrop team led by Dale Lockett are all going to be located in the Lakey House. Did I say that correct? The mayor's been schooling me on that, on the Lakey House. And the reason for that is we got to all work together. And so the team members that I have mentioned have all made a strong commitment to the overall mission of creating a great tourist experience based on cooperation and strong teamwork. And we collectively understand the urgency needed to maintain sales tax levels while we diversify and grow our property tax base. So we will be spending quite a bit of time in our presentations talking about the convention center, but a couple of noteworthy things relative to the convention center. I have been really thrilled and impressed with some of the engagement that I have received from our citizens. And thanks to some information provided by some interested and engaged citizens, they have educated me on some credible information on how hot tax funds convention centers. And it's on bookings, not revenue. And what it essentially says that there needs to be 50% of the bookings of the facility should be to host conventions or meetings that directly promote tourism and the hotel and convention industry. So based on the proposed work plan for 2018 that staff is working on, the creation of Visit Bastrop, and the team approach created with the hospitality and downtown department, we're optimistic that bookings for the center in fiscal year 2018 will exceed the 51% bookings that meets the intent of the law. So as a result of that, the HOT Fund will continue to cover all expenses related to the debt of the facility for another year. I had mentioned during a workshop that I was concerned that wouldn't happen, and perhaps we needed to shift some of that to the general fund, but we believe that we can do that and meet the intent of the HOT Fund. The convention center will go dark when not in use, and that will help reduce our overhead expenditures. Staff will set up and manage events when they are booked, and when they're not in use, they will be providing that attention to detail downtown with increased landscaping, litter control, and working our special events. Part of the things that we will be dealing with very soon in our work plan are rates, some of the bureaucracy challenges we have with rentals and some other things, but we will plan a much more detailed workshop with council in the months to come on that. The community festival funding, I've talked about that. We are so appreciative of our partnership that we have with the Bastrop Chamber, who coordinates this festival, and truly without them, it would be a huge drain on staff, and it would really cause a lot of our service levels to decline if we maintain that same level. But we have money from the HOT Fund, from the BP&L, as well as from business sponsorships that the Chamber is anticipated to generate, and that's going to be our community festival, as well as Juneteenth that we've talked about being funded out of BP&L. So essentially, the community festival aspect of hotel occupancy will again be run through hospitality and downtown. We're delighted that the comprehensive plan acknowledged the need for our destination marketing. I think next week we're going to approve their contract, and 50% of the HOT revenue will be provided to Visit Bastrop annually, because we need them to really help with that urgent need to get the tourists in here to shore up our sales tax. After reviewing the state law requirements of the HOT funds and HOT application requirements to use Bastrop logo on all of its marketing, and the urgent need to maximize our HOT funds to offset our tourists, I am recommending postponing any funding for any of our hot applications until the budget adoption on September 26th. Staff will be meeting individually with all of our recipients this year to go through a detailed accounting of what that money has been spent for, and more importantly, be focusing on next year on some deliverables, dates and submissions for marketing materials so that we can make sure that everything funded from the hot funds has our brand on it. And so we need to do all of that work so that we can provide a detailed recommendation that meets not only the intent, but the spirit of the hot fund and absolutely supports our critical need for sales tax. So we have plugged $225,000 for funding, but have made no recommendations on allocations. Bastrop Art and Public Places, the comprehensive plan acknowledges the important foundational work this group has done, and it also suggests that a long-term strategy for placement of visual and performing arts assets be conducted. And in the theme of maximizing our hotel occupancy fund, I am recommending that Council ask BAIPP to do a cultural arts master plan, that you meet with them in a joint workshop to create a purpose and the non-negotiables, and that they develop a citywide vision and master plan for art allocation. So as a result of that, in their budget, there's a line item that funds the city's permanent collection of art as well as the Cultural Heritage Trail Project. And I am suggesting that we not fund those two this year, pending the outcome of that plan. So future purchases are very strategic in buying and supporting art that meets the mission of HOT and works toward our tourism need. In the Fairview Cemetery, there are 3 expenditures that I want to note in this fund. The first is we need to buy a mower. Obviously, one of the most important functions we perform in the cemetery is grounds maintenance. We have also put $32,000 in the budget for ground truthing. We believe in the west section of the cemetery that there are some unmarked graves, and the ground truthing technology will survey half of the west section to identify lots where unmarked grave exists. And while we may not know who's buried there, we certainly want to acknowledge and be respectful of their burial site, and we'll properly mark that. And then any lots where no burials are identified will be available for future sale. And then Fairview Cemetery is a perpetual care cemetery. And perpetual care means we own it in perpetuity forever and ever and ever and ever. And so while we still have lots to sell and can set appropriate fees for investments to generate that care, we need to conduct an actuarial study that will give us the necessary tools to set fees and know how much money we need to be setting aside so that the cemetery is not a burden in future years when it's no longer generating revenue. The Red Light Camera Fund, we've talked about this, but very quickly, we're going to use the available funds in that toward improved street signage and striping so that the reflectivity requirements of the Federal Highway Administration are met. And the goal behind the reflectivity standards are you see the signs as well at night as you do during the day. And just as a note, nighttime driving statistics show that 40% of all fatal car crashes occur at night. And the fatal crash rate of 16-year-olds is nearly twice as high at night. Reflectivity of our signage is critically important. We have $311,000 toward sidewalk connectivity. Not long after I got here, we had a citizen who was pregnant at the time come and speak to council. And she had been walking along the street where there was no sidewalk, pushing her small child. She was hit by a motorist. And fortunately, she wasn't hurt, and it didn't hurt her unborn child, but she made a strong plea for sidewalks. And so I think one of the strongest programs we can do for pedestrian safety in our case is the sidewalk connectivity and provide opportunities for our citizens to not have to walk in the street. So there's $311,000 going to that, and I would just remind you that that was a strong need we saw in our comp plan. The drainage fund will, I had originally indicated that we thought we could get it done in September. I will tell you we are going to recommend that we adopt that in October so that we can have adequate time to discuss that, and we'll do a full-blown presentation next week as well as a series of public meetings. But we have indicated that this money will go to maintaining our drainage systems, grading the ditches, making sure that they flow correctly, removing debris, and essentially by creating a fund, we will have about $350,000 appropriated for maintenance citywide in these 3 zones, and essentially a dedicated crew of 3 people that will do nothing but drainage all year long. And even at that, we know it will take several years to complete the cycle. I indicated to you in previous meetings that when we produce the budget, we would tell you what our recommendation of the fee is. And we are recommending a monthly residential fee of $3.75 per meter per month, and a commercial fee of $7.50 per service unit equivalent, and a 3/4 inch meter equals 1. And just to put that into perspective relative to value, and I believe that our citizens will be getting a significant value in the maintenance of our drainage system to help minimize the concerns of flooding when we get normal storm events. This certainly will not help us when we get the epic storms. But for $3.75 a month, we're going to maintain the drainage system. You can buy an Egg McMuffin meal at McDonald's for $3.99. My favorite cup of coffee, which is a venti cinnamon dulce latte at Starbucks, for $5.35 each. Or if you smoke and like Marlboros, it's 2 months at $7 each. So we think it's a real value at $3.75. We'll be doing a number of public meetings, and at our public meeting, our budget meeting next Tuesday, we'll go into more detail on dates and times and when the video and marketing material will go in. We will work on, at the end of September, a work plan that will accompany this document, because again, it really isn't about the numbers, it's about the outcome. We are planning a 2.5-day retreat, and then once we complete that, we'll have a full-day retreat with council and go back over our priorities. But I tell you all of this to tell you in future years, this budget will come forward with a work plan, so that there is transparency for our citizens to understand what these numbers look like and translate into services and programs that they can quantify. In closing, I want to acknowledge that the development of any budget is a team effort, and a huge thanks to Tracy Waldron and her team for all of the time and energy put into the construction of the budget document. I have a huge debt of gratitude to the executive cabinet and their team, who have brought me up to speed on the needs of the organization in my short tenure, and have worked hard to provide quality funding information from which you can make a decision. Last but certainly not least, I appreciate your strategic vision, all of the time and energy you will go into reviewing this budget to ensure we continue to put together quality programs and services to our citizens, and then for all that will participate over the next 6 weeks, I appreciate you as well. So, Mayor and Council, I have fulfilled my obligation of telling you about the budget, presenting it to you, and being transparent. We will have a budget workshop next Monday, and we will focus on the general fund. I will post it for all funds, so if we quickly go through the general fund, we can move on to the other funds. So we will have a budget meeting Monday night. If there are not a lot of questions, because we've had budget meetings, we may not need Tuesday night, but it will be posted should we need that. The first public hearing on the budget will be September 12th. The budget will be adopted on the 26th of September, so that gives us roughly 6 weeks. If you have any questions between now and next Monday or Tuesday and want to visit with staff, please do not hesitate to call me. If you have questions, if you'll email them, then I'll make sure all of you get the answers. And thank you for this opportunity.
So I'm sure I speak for all of council. I'd really like to give Linda a round of applause, her and her staff. Some of you don't know it, but Linda's husband works out of town, and you're really dedicated when you make your husband leave town so that you can only sleep 2 hours a night. She has been really working tremendously. I also want to mention that the budget workshop that she talked about on Monday starts at 6:30 for any of you that are interested. That'll be posted on the website, but that meeting will start at 6:30. Council, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask City Manager, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'd just like to comment. I mean, for the council, a lot of this, most of this is review. If you hadn't been at our workshops up to this point, you may not have seen all of this or any of this, but I want to say that this was just very, very well put together. Without a doubt, I mean, the most comprehensive budget presentation that I've seen since I've been on the council. People look for open and transparent government. I think this is a great example of it. I think after the citizens digest this a little bit and get a feel of what we go through and what you, and especially Tracy, thank you so much, go through to put together a plan like this. I think it was just an excellent presentation and responsibility to our community.
Mayor, will the proposed budget be on the website?
Yes, sir. I believe it is being put on the website this evening. I know Andreas has a copy of it and is putting it up. I think he was waiting on this presentation to do so.
Thank you.
So it will be there and available.
And I would encourage the citizens that there are several slides that are pages out of the comprehensive plan, and if you think they were hard to read on the screen, they're also a little bit hard to read in here, but the comprehensive plan is also posted, so you can have a reference and you can get it within context. You can read enough of the charts to tell what she's trying to pull from it, but the tie to the comprehensive plan is critical, and I just want to remind you that the comprehensive plan is also online. Councilmember Jones?
I'd like to request a 5-minute recess.
I think we might want to go to the next item first, and you'll understand why in a second, if you'll respectfully let me just keep going. So with that, it's not posted for action, so encourage citizens to participate, and we will move on to item 5B, review and discuss proposed ethics ordinance revisions using a side-by-side comparison of proposed changes as prepared by City Attorney Bragg. Mayor Pro Tem Schiff.
Yes, and I'd like to start with an apology for what I'm going to say next to those of you who are in the audience here and waiting to participate in our review of the proposed ethics ordinance. But it's come to my attention today that perhaps the red line version that was out didn't reflect the original version of the ethics ordinance where we started, and that I did receive from Linda Curtis today her version, a comparison of what was original to what is being proposed today. And I personally didn't have a chance to go through that. I know there are others in the community that were concerned that would like to do a more thorough review. And so I make a motion that we table item 5B until the next meeting.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion by council? Seeing no discussion, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
I have some discussion.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I want to make it really clear that I am not at all interested in pushing anything. I am not in a hurry with this ordinance. I want to make sure that everybody's had the opportunity to get any questions that they want answered. It's important. And I am going to say that we haven't had very many opportunities. The ordinance was not used. I think this is really in response to the last time it was used. There were 5 attorneys involved in that process, and every one of them said there were problems with that ordinance. And so what we have been told and what our idea is to initially just go through and immediately fix some of the major issues of that ordinance. And we had a municipal firm out of Austin who gave us sort of a punch list of those immediate issues as a result of being involved in that hearing. But really, it's sort of like we've accelerated past that and we've gone into just a full-blown discussion of how to redo the whole thing. And that wasn't really, the initial, from my understanding, intent. So anyone in the audience who's gotten the idea that we've been trying to rush through this and push it, that's not the case. Like I said, initially the idea is that we would get a Band-Aid on this so that the ordinance was functional and then go out for a complete rewrite. And we sort of leapfrogged over that. And so that might have given the wrong impression that there was a hurry, and there's not. So if the citizens feel like they need another workshop, if we need to spend more time on this, it's as important to me and to the council, to the staff, as it is to you that we get this right. And so, anyway, that's what I need to say about that.
So I want to thank you very much, Councilmember Jones. I also want to make sure everyone understands that by tabling it to the next meeting, that would be August 22nd. It would be on again for workshop, I believe, Mayor Pro Tem Schiff, that's what you're suggesting. And I also want to remind everyone, for the ordinance to be adopted, it has to go through 2 readings, and there will be public comments at both of those readings. So if we were to have had a conversation tonight and do another workshop on August 22nd, the soonest possible date that we could have had a second reading would have been September 26th. So knowing the motion that's on the floor with a second, and I'll check and make sure, I don't know if anyone else has further conversation, but I want to really encourage citizens to submit their concerns in writing, to communicate with us. We are wanting to make sure that we are inclusive and completely transparent. Several of you have submitted things. We've tried to take those into account. That's very, very helpful. And I just want to make sure, if you haven't had a chance yet, or if you were thinking about doing it, please get your items, comments submitted as soon as you possibly can. Councilmember Ennis.
For clarity's sake, will this workshop be in advance of our regular meeting or part of our regular meeting?
It's my understanding that it would be, just like it is tonight, a part of our workshop. So the meeting would start at 6:30 and it would be a workshop item. Any other questions?
I mean, is that agreeable, or is there a reason why we need to have a 5 o'clock workshop like we have in the past?
At this point in time, unless something significant is determined, I would say 6:30, but if after reviewing this, if any of you think that that is needed, if you will please contact me directly, we will make sure and post the agenda for whatever time is required. But absent new information, it will be 6:30, but if there is something that will need a lot of conversation, then we will certainly make accommodations at the next meeting.
And that decision we have all the way until August 18th to make that decision, because that would have to be decided when we post the agenda. So we have some time to decide. But I think the intention right now is hopefully to be able to do it at 6:30. Let's see. Okay. Just wanted to...
Mayor, after your vote, could I say one short thing after you vote?
Well, we're in discussion. You want to say it now?
I want to strongly encourage people, particularly Glenn Johnson and others who've written in comments, to comment again. This ordinance is a lot of moving parts. They all have to work together, and we need as much analysis as we can get to make sure we get it right. So I not only appreciate that, I really strongly hope people will follow up on that and do that. That's very, very helpful.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bragg. All right, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you, and then we'll take Ms. Jones' advice and take a 5-minute recess. Okay, it's 8:13 and we're back in session. We are now at item number 7, citizens' comments. And I am told that we have a citizen's comment. Mr. Peterson with Blue Flame.
No, I think it's the other Willie.
Oh, the other Willie. Willie R. I thought it was a trick.
No, ma'am, it is not a trick. Could you please come down here, please? I know it seems kind of odd, and she is correct. My name is Willie R. Ruth Peterson, not Willie L. Peterson. But our Blue Flame Cruisers, which we had our 10th annual car show this year, and my sister-in-law Peggy that came last week to present everything, she forgot to bring this. Oh. So we decided tonight that I was going to bring it down to you and present it to the city. And we would like to thank y'all for the use of the parking lot, everything that y'all have done for us in the past years. And just want to thank you all together.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I have to put on glasses or I can't read it. It's the 10th annual car show. Thank you for your contributions and support. June 17th, 2017, and it's a blue flame. It's very cool. So we'll make sure that that's up on the city secretary's desk where everybody can see it out by the reception area. City Secretary, do I have any other citizen comments? Okay. We are going to move on to item 8, the consent agenda. Do I have anyone on the dais that needs a consent agenda item pulled? Anyone in the audience? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll read the consent agenda.
The consent agenda reads as follows. Item 8A, consider action to approve minutes from the July 20th, 2017, July 25th, 2017, and August 1st, 2017 meetings. Item 8B, consider action to approve the second reading of ordinance number 2017-19 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending the budget for the fiscal year 2017 in accordance with existing statutory requirements, appropriating the various amounts herein, repealing all prior ordinances and actions in conflict herewith, and providing an effective date. That concludes the consent agenda.
Happy to take a motion.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes. Thank you very much, Council. With your permission, I would like to make the next item, and for the audience to be aware, we're going to take item 9K. Judge Hines already works enough hours, and so I'm hoping that we can get her home. So I'm going to go on to 9K on the bottom of page 3. Consider action to approve Resolution R 2017-64 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving reappointment of Charlotte G. Hines as presiding judge, Bastrop Municipal Court, City of Bastrop, and naming the appointed judge to a term of 3 years to run concurrently with the term of the mayor as stipulated by the City of Bastrop Charter and establishing an effective date.
I move to approve.
I have a motion. I have a motion and a second from Councilmember Peterson. Is there any discussion? I would just like to thank Judge Hines and her entire staff for the fantastic job that they do.
Absolutely.
Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll, they can go home.
Councilmember Ennis,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes, and thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes.
Thank you very much. We will now go back. You guys can go. You're free. Your permission. We're going to go back to 9A. I'm back on page 2. Consider action to approve the first reading of Resolution Number R 2017-58 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving a project using funds provided by the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation in an amount exceeding $10,000 for the Downtown Trail Expansion Project and providing an effective day, and move to include on the August 22nd, 2017 agenda for a second reading. Mr. Kirkpatrick.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, City Manager, for having me tonight. The EDC Board approved a resolution, a finding of fact resolution for the Downtown Trail expansion at their last board meeting. And as part of the approval process for an expenditure over $10,000, a resolution comes to the City Council for 2 readings of approval for this project. If you're not familiar with this project, we've had several public input sessions. We've had a public hearing at the EDC Board, and it has, I have spoken on it several times, I believe at the last council meeting, giving an update. But this trail completes a 1.8-mile loop downtown. It picks up here at SQ and comes down to 71. This right here is Coffee Dog for point of reference. Following up 71 east, there's a little green line here that is going over the Colorado River. That is the frontage road bridge in the multimodal section for the TxDOT tie-in and trail over the Colorado that TxDOT will provide with the bridge. It comes down to Pecan Street here, and TxDOT was kind enough to bring it back to Water Street on the east side of the Colorado River. The pink section here is the downtown section of the trail running up Water Street, then turning on to Main Street there at Ferry Park and running up to where Wells Fargo and the Wells Fargo sign is. That is also the starting point for what will be at some point the Main Street Improvement Project to continue on up Main Street. But this will complete a 1.8-mile loop once the overpass bridge that is scheduled to let this fall is completed according to TxDOT's schedule. So the resolution that you are considering is the EDC portion of this, and we posted the public hearing notice almost 2.5 months ago that the EDC board had to hold, and so it's I got a mistake here. $180,000 in the current budget year, which is FY16-17, that is being rolled forward into the 17-18 budget, where there's $250,000, and the 19 budget an additional $250,000. What we believe, we have found some alternate funding sources for FY18, thanks to the city manager and city staff, and most importantly, Keep Bastrop County Beautiful and their TxDOT grant, that we will be able to actually build all 3 sections of the trail in FY 2018, God willing, and the money sources all coming together. And so it's still $680,000 is the budget. We have spent $20,500 this year having the trail route designed and laid out and our engineer look at it, which means in FY 2018 there's $409,500 available. Keep Bastrop County Beautiful has the TxDOT grant for their award of $120,000. that they have offered for the project. The city collects a fee in lieu of sidewalks. These fees, as well as the BPNL community grant portion of it, are $36,000 and $94,000. The trick to this is the BPNL and the fee in lieu of will be used in the pink section, which is in BPNL service territory. The Keep Bastrop County Beautiful grant, which needs to be used in TxDOT right-of-way, will be used to offset the expenses in the blue section, which accelerates the trail completion into FY 2018. This is all going to be handled budgetarily, but the resolution you have still has the FY 2019, which when this project is complete next year, we'll all come back and revisit what the best use of additional trail resources in Bastrop is. As the city engineers the trail to the state park, there's a match requirement for that, and we may be coming back to the EDC board as well as the council to be able to use that FY 19 250 as the match for the state park trail going up 21 toward the state park. So that is the downtown trail expansion project, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Just to, in this moment, put this in context of the significance of this, with the downtown trail expansion, the 1.8 miles of trail, with all of the sidewalk connectivity that is being funded through the red light camera fund for next year, as well as the trail to the state park that needs to be built, I believe, by 2019, there will be significant walkability in this community, which was a priority identified in the comprehensive plan. The executive cabinet and I are reading a book called The Walkable City, and we are going to, we'll be through with it about the end of October, and we're going to be walking the city to incorporate many of the design elements that are necessary for really true walkability, because with the perfect storm of demographics that we see with our millennials and our baby boomers, having a walkable community is a huge selling point. And this really is a key component to the downtown to get our tourists walking through downtown and experiencing Bastrop at a ground level, which is way different than you experience in an automobile. And having lived downtown now for 6 months or 5 months, it's one of the best things I think that's available. So I appreciate BEDC supporting this project and running with it, and think this is a huge community asset.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kirkpatrick?
I have a procedural question. Why are we approving and authorizing separately on this issue? It's 9A and 9B.
9.
Is it?
9B is a different
9B
project.
is a separate project.
I'm sorry.
It's a long agenda, don't
I
worry.
was looking and I thought, oh, I am sorry. There was one on here that was approving, and I thought it was. Maybe it wasn't this one, obviously.
We'll find it. We're going to go through all of them.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I have a question. I just wanted to ask you to talk a little bit more about coming back. You were saying that we were going to have to come back for the state park trail.
Correct.
Just a little bit.
This resolution, back before, when we finalized the BEDC portion of this, was before we had identified alternate funding sources for 2018. And so part of the law related to funding this type of project in EDC law is we have to post notice of a public hearing, which starts a 60-day window for the public to petition for a ballot referendum. And so once we post that notice and hold the public hearing, there's a 60-day window there. And within the timing of putting together the FY18 budget, once we identified the alternate funding source, there wasn't time to repost the public hearing and the 60-day waiting period to include it in the budget. And it was determined that instead of running a budget amendment next year, let's go ahead and complete the process that we're in and do the budget amendment on the back side once those dollars, all the dollars are accounted for and they're available in FY19. EDC law can get kind of complicated.
Yeah, he's keeping us legal, keeping us legal. Okay, I would be happy to hear a motion.
I'm make a motion to approve.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the dais? Councilmember Nelson? Oh, getting ready to vote. All right, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and Sean won't go far. I'll read 9B. Consider action to approve the first reading of Resolution Number R 2117-59 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, authorizing a project of the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation in an amount exceeding $10,000 for the Granite and Stone project and providing an effective date and move to include on the August 22nd agenda for a second reading.
Again, this is part of y'all's statutory requirement to hold a reading on any expenditure over $10,000. This is Project Minerals or Granite and Stone LLC. At my last update to the City Council, I kind of gave y'all an update on it. The project is going to be located in the Bastrop Business Industrial Park, which the EDC owns a majority of the undeveloped acres in there. It's a total of 263 acres. We have several shovel-ready sites in there as well as some sites to be developed. This project here is going to go here on the southern half of B1, approximately 5.5 acres out of a 10.5 acre tract. This is an older rendering. We'll be coming back in a couple weeks or after the next board meeting with kind of an update of where the park is going and why we're going to recommend, and it looks like the board has agreed to include in the budget some improvements in the park related to ingress and egress and drainage there in the north end of the park. So they're an importer of wholesale fabricator of granite and stone products. This is a sister facility of theirs in Massachusetts that they just constructed. It's going to be a 50,000 square foot facility hiring up to 150 employees. By year 5, they're investing up to $9 million in the facility. As part of the agreement, they're going to purchase the 5.5 acres from us. Once they obtain their certificate of occupancy, we will rebate 1/2 of their land rebate, and then at 1 year anniversary and meeting their employment milestone, we'll rebate the second half. The following years, we have an employment funding rebate that is valued at $112,500. And then for any sales, local retail sales above the $5 million threshold, the EDC is rebating 0.25% of the EDC's portion of the local sales and use tax. And so that's 1/2 of what the EDC collects. This is only an estimated number because it's based on actual sales and actual collections because it's a true rebate of their sales tax. But based on the numbers they provided us in their short form application, it's $86,625. We do an economic impact analysis on these projects. Without any infrastructure improvements, it pays back in 2.1. When we bring the infrastructure project back, it pays back right at about 5 years. Our sweet spot is normally 3 to 5 years is what we're looking at for that economic incentive analysis. It totals out to be $2,608 per job. The total incentive estimate is $391,125. Again, investing up to $9 million, 150 employees, 50,000 square foot facility. At year 5, they're projecting $20 million in annual taxable sales. It's local sales and use tax, our product that will be subject to local sales and use tax. I got the question the other day, why would they want to ship FOB from their facility? Well, we're rebating back to them 0.25% of their sales tax, and what's the advantage of that? The city collects their 1%. We'll get above $5 million, 0.5% up to $5 million in sales, and then the 1/4% over that, and the county still collects their 0.5%. So the sales tax rebate encourages them to have their clients come pick the material up in Bastrop, Texas, so that once they take possession here, local sales and use tax is applicable to it. The 10-year net benefit to the city of Bastrop is $3.3 million, and all taxing entities is $5.5 million. And I believe that is my only other slide.
So just for clarification for everyone in the audience, that 10-year benefit of the $3.3 million, that's new money to the city.
Correct. That is the net benefit to the city of Bastrop.
And every one of those rebates, however you want to call them, all of that is paid out of the EDC tax that's collected. It is not sales tax from the general fund, and it is not property tax.
That is correct.
Any questions for Sean? Mr. Kirkpatrick, I should say. Councilmember Ennis?
Sean, I waded through this, and not being a legal eagle eye, you're going to have to help me. On the performance agreement?
Correct.
It refers to the years that the amount of employees you have to have per year. And on the 5th anniversary, it says 100,000. Shouldn't that be 150?
It does say 100 in the performance agreement. So when we accept their short form application and verify what they're planning to do, and we build an incentive offer based on that, we build it off of measurable success and build the offer off of what we believe is achievable in the goals that they're trying to reach. And so their goal is to hire 150 people, but to be eligible for the incentive that we offered, the 100 milestone is what is included in the performance agreement. Because what we don't want to do is set a company up to fail. Now, what the incentive agreement does on the employment, if they miss their employment numbers for a year, they're not eligible for that job incentive. And so they miss that year, and we just move on to the next year. And so there is no proration to the job incentive. It is you either make your number that year and your wages, or you don't.
I was just concerned that they didn't jive. So
no,
okay.
I completely understand that, but we want them to be successful, so we build the incentive around what's going to be the performance standard in there. But we also have on the other side of it their application of what their goals and objectives are.
And if they exceed their goals, the rebate's still the same.
That is correct, and it's a not to exceed number. So it doesn't vary in a year that they have 75 employees in the incentive agreement. If they have 90, we have a not to exceed amount. It makes our cash flow predictable, and so we're able to build our budget around what's in the incentive agreement.
Okay, thank you.
All right, if you have no more questions for Mr. Kirkpatrick, I would like to entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
I have a motion from
Second.
Councilman and a second from Mayor Pro Tem Schiff. Council, do you have any discussion? Seeing no one, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Kirkpatrick. Feel free to bring back more deals like that. Okay, we get to turn the page. We're on page 3. I'm at 9C, consider an action to approve resolution number R2017-60 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, authorizing the city manager to enter a property use agreement with the Bastrop 1832 Farmers Market for the property located at 1302 Chestnut and establishing an effective date. Ms. O'Brien.
Mayor, Council, this project is a long time coming. I think I was told my first day. That we needed to make some changes and do something at the farmers market. And so I'm really excited to be here tonight to report on the progress that the Bastrop 1832 Board of Directors has made once we all started cooperating and working together. So the Bastrop Main Street program has been delighted in the progress that this hardworking group of vendors and community members has made over the last 6 to 9 months. If you haven't been over to the farmers market lately on a Saturday morning, I encourage you to go check it out. It's drastically improved and different than it was this time last year, and it's all because of the hard work and the dedication that they have put in. We all know that a thriving farmers market is an integral part of any community, of any destination, and I think that the Bastrop 1832 Board of Directors is best equipped to continue to manage that site as a farmers market. The lease agreement before you does change things up a little bit from what it has previously done. Instead of paying us $1 a month and taking care of the maintenance as an exclusive user of the lot, the Bastrop 1832 1332 board will actually just be a leasee of the property. And so the city would take over the maintenance, and we would be allowed, if the opportunity presents itself for different types of community programming, to lease it out on days that the farmers market is not currently using it. Now, I know we have several of the board members here. I do want them to stand up, and I want to give them a round of applause for their hard work, so if you guys don't mind. And our new market manager is here as well. So I'm sure they'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have, and I'm also happy to address any questions about the lease agreement.
Would you show us who the new manager is?
Yes, Robert, please stand up.
Oh, great, thank you, thank you. Any questions for Ms. O'Brien?
I just really want to thank you all for getting this worked out, because the winners on this are the community. And I really appreciate you. And Sarah, thank you.
Thank you. And thanks to Dick Smith as well. He was a big hand in this process.
All right. A shout out for Mr. Smith, who I don't see in the audience tonight, but am confident he's probably watching from home. All right. I would love a motion if anyone.
I move that we approve Resolution 2017-60.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the dais?
I have a question for the city manager.
Please.
With the discussion that we've had relative to budget and the short staffing, does this have a significant workload added to our city employees?
No, sir. This is one of those strategic elements as we begin to work as a team with the convention center, with Main Street, with Visit Bastrop, working with the leadership of the art center across the street. We think there's some real opportunities as we move forward to do some things, as well as work with the dentist next door, who's made a significant investment, has an additional building. So we just see this as one more critical piece. As Councilmember Jones mentioned, it's a huge asset to the community, and just gives us more tools in the toolbox to be flexible, and that's what we're looking for.
All right, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Shipp?
Yes.
Councilmember Anderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm opening the public hearing. Do you see me trying to make sure I'm doing this right? I'm opening the public hearing and considering action to approve resolution number R2017-61 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approval of the Second Amendment to Consent Agreement for the Colony Municipal Utility District Number 1 and successor districts being 1,516.768 acres out of the Jose Manuel Bangs Survey Abstract A5, located west of FM 969 and east of FM 1209, within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, repealing all conflicting resolutions and providing an effective date. Mr. Brandon.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Yes, this request is related to the Colony subdivision, which is a roughly 1,500-acre development that is off of Highway 969 and also has access off of Highway 71. Back in 2007, the city consented to the annexation of an additional 25 acres that would be added to the overall development that's located roughly in this area. So it's on the east side of 969. The Colony is a municipal utility district, which is a special district that's created by the state that allows that property to function as sort of a limited government. They have similar authorities that local governments have when it comes to issuing bonds and other financial mechanisms to pay for the infrastructure that goes into developing the subdivision. And so that original consent agreement, which is required to establish that district, was executed by the city in 2004. Since then, that consent agreement that also defines the overall development standards that apply to that development was amended once last year. The property was still under ownership by 4-Star Real Estate, and late last year the property was transferred to Hunt Communities. After that transfer and after dealing with the new developers and the builders that they work with, they identified some other building products that they wanted to build inside the subdivision. And so one piece, well, the first piece of this amendment is to add that 25 acres officially into the limits of the development. The second would be to include the ability to develop a certain percentage of lots within the subdivision as single-family attached housing, which wasn't included in the original allowed land uses that were described in that original consent agreement.
Which you really mean like duplex townhomes?
Yes, yes. Single-family attached is
Are those kind of fitting a need of being more affordable within that? So we really appreciate that. Thank you.
It's not only more affordable, but it also allows that development to maximize its diversity, which helps the overall development over time. It would still leave the maximum density of the development the same. It would just allow for that land use to be incorporated into the design. The third piece to this amendment is the ability to administratively approve minor amendments to the development standards and other items within the consent agreement without having to go through the formal public hearing process and approval process that we're going through tonight. And in your packet, it kind of describes what would be defined as a minor amendment. It's an amendment that does not increase the maximum number of living units above 2,500, which is what they're currently allowed. It would not increase the traffic impacts of the development or would not have any significant adverse impact upon neighboring properties. And so if it's something minor that can work within those restrictions, we could approve that administratively. We did notify every landowner within the district as well as everyone within 200 feet of the district. We received we did receive 2 responses. One was in favor and one offered no objection. So that is the extent of my presentation. We have representatives from the developer and the developer's engineer. So if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer them.
Before we do that, just for planning purposes, do we have anyone signed up to speak for the public hearing? Okay. There's no citizens signed up to speak. Councilmember Ennis?
I have a couple of questions. It's just that little bitty portion right there that's a little bit more visible on our backup information that is what we're talking about, right?
That's exactly right. In your packet, it's included in this red area here. And so the consent agreement amendment would apply to the entire acreage, which would be everything in pink. But it's just one piece of that agreement would include adding that additional 25 acres to
product type.
Yes.
Now,
the product type could be included anywhere inside the subdivision.
Oh.
This is just adding additional acreage that could also be included or use the other land use standards that are within the consent agreement.
Now, you list on the minimum lot size 3,000, minimum dwelling size is 1,000. So you're going to put two dwellings on a lot of 1,000 each?
That would be. That would be the total unit size. So they wouldn't necessarily be 2 1,000 square foot buildings. Okay, for each side. So
would be the minimum for each side?
Yes.
Okay.
So it would be 2,000. Yes.
That's my question.
Okay, since there's no one signed up to speak, I'm closing the public hearing. Is there any other questions for Mr. Brandon? I'm happy to take a motion if anyone's happy to give one.
I move that we approve.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Schiff.
I second.
I have a second from Councilmember Jones. Is there any discussion from the dais?
Yeah, I would make, I might make a comment on this. This was the one that was duplicated. I didn't see which one it was. As I was going through the packet, and this is, I guess, to our city manager and city secretary, I see that there's a recommendation of staff to the P&Z, and then there's a recommendation of staff, which is the same, to the council. So it's duplicated in my packet. Oh. And so it was a little confusing. I just read it. I said, well, why do we have two items that are identical? Because they are identical. Yes. If you don't notice that one says P&Z at the top, and the other is P&Z staff report, and the other just says staff report. So my suggestion is, even if you want to include the P&Z report, no, just if it's duplicated backup material, let's not duplicate it twice. It's hard enough. We're working off of these things. It's hard enough to figure out what you got when I'm used to paper, and you can really flip through and see what you got, but I'm seeing this stuff twice, and I'm thinking, what do we got going here? So can that be made simpler next time?
And we appreciate your willingness to move into the 21st century. And with that, I will suggest to staff that what we do is incorporate on zoning issues a section called Planning and Zoning Commission recommendations, and let them just provide you the pertinent detail that's different between that meeting and this, and one attachment. And it will certainly make things easier for Ann and I, because you're not the only one that remains confused by this. So it will help all of us in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
The other thing I'd like to add is it would be helpful if you would just in bold say planning and zoning recommended or recommended against, or what, because that's one of the things that we're first looking for is how did it go through the last,
Mayor?
Yes.
Could I ask?
Certainly.
Mr. Brandon. You sent out survey the neighborhood 200 feet, yes, or the whole subdivision?
Both. We sent it out to everyone that owns property within the district itself, as well as 200 feet outside of the district.
And there was no objection to the multifamily dwellings? Great, thanks.
Okay, any other questions? I have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes.
Great. Okay, we're on 9E, and this one is not a public hearing, but we are going to consider action to approve resolution number R2017-62 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the preliminary plat known as Bastrop Grove, being 52.684 acres out of the Nancy Blakey survey, located east of Highway 304 and south of West State Highway 71 within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, repealing all conflicting resolutions and providing an effective date. Mr. Brandon.
Thank you very much. This item is a preliminary plat for the what we call the Grove property, which is near the intersection of Highway 71 and State Highway 304. This is the site of, this includes the property that's going to be the site of the future Seton micro hospital that we've all probably heard about. Its entirety, in its entirety, it's roughly 52 acres. And there's kind of a map that kind of shows how it relates to some other developments around town. It's fairly close to the commercial sections of Pecan Park, and it's across the street from Hunter's Crossing. This preliminary plat is actually was previously approved in 2013, but was not pursued after it was approved, and so it expired, and it's being resubmitted in its current form. It's a total of 9 separate lots, 2 of the larger lots, and then there's 7 out parcel lots that would front Highway 71. It also includes the dedication of 30 feet of a total of a 60-foot right-of-way along its southern border that will serve as the extension of Agnes Boulevard, which, if I can go back to my map, which will eventually start here at its intersection with Home Depot Drive and extend east through Bastrop Grove, through Pecan Park, and eventually tie into Agnes Street, which is located over by Walmart. So this is this preliminary plan proposes to dedicate and build half of that roadway, which would leave the remaining portion to be dedicated and built when the property to the south develops. Now, as far as utilities, they're served by either an existing water and wastewater line that runs along Highway 71. The plan also proposes to extend a new 12-inch water line within the Agnes Street right-of-way along the southern boundary of the property. With wastewater service, the plan shows including a lift station that would provide service to the two larger lots, leaving the out parcel lots to be served by the existing line along 71. I would also mention that this lift station is being designed and set up to be somewhat temporary, in that it can be incorporated into one of the capital improvement projects that we've mentioned at the budget workshops that would allow us to abandon that lift station and incorporate it into a gravity flow system that would be tying into the existing line on Highway 71, routing all of that wastewater southward towards the new wastewater plant. Other utilities, the drainage system is being designed to carry stormwater runoff from the property south to the Colorado River. Initially, it will be designed to contain or provide a temporary detention system that would be located south of the property that would be incorporated into a future channel that would be extended all the way to the river. That's the main points that this development would have.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem Schiff.
Yeah, go back to the plat. I noticed that there's a east-west street on the south side of the property. You said it lines up with Hunter's Crossing. I don't see any north-south streets.
Yes. So I'm glad you brought that up. The way this is set up is...
I see a driveway.
There is a driveway access here, a potential driveway access here, and I can explain that further in just a second. But there's also an access easement that would be provided for these out parcel lots, because they would not have direct access to Highway 71. And so the main ingress point to the development from Highway 71 would be at this location, and it would also provide access easement within the development so that there would be public access between Highway 71 and Agnes Street. But it is not a publicly dedicated right.
Okay, so the dotted line that runs through the middle of whatever that lot to the right is, that is a dedicated access easement?
It would be, yes, sir. And it's also subject to change based on the development
I understand.
Of that property.
Because it really needs a connection to the whatever that new road's going to be called.
That's been a long topic of discussion with the developers and all of the stakeholders involved with this project. We started out requesting that dedicated right-of-way, but then the more we looked into it, we realized that the main goal of that access is just to have proper vehicular circulation between those two roads. And we just didn't feel like we needed the full dedicated right-of-way.
And there won't be any other driveways on 71 is what you're saying. They will all feed from the south.
That's correct.
Okay, so it forces the developer to do it whether they want to or not. That's because right. You got to have it for feeding the traffic to those lots.
That's correct. And by showing it on the preliminary plat, even though it's subject to change, it still gives us that legal standing that we need to ensure that we get proper circulation between those two roadways. They have submitted, we've reviewed a traffic impact analysis for the project. It is considered an initial impact analysis because there has been some changes in the previous design that was approved by TxDOT, and upon further investigation, TxDOT is not as keen to allow a driveway connection at this location that was originally planned to be provided. And so with that still up in the air, and then also the development parameters for this lot being still up in the air, we need to come back and revisit the traffic impacts of the development.
So you're taking advantage of the preliminary plat process?
That's right. Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions for Mr. Brandon? Happy to take a motion.
Move that we approve Resolution R-217-62.
I second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion from the dais? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff.
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes.
Councilmember Pearson.
Yes.
Councilmember Jones.
Yes.
We get to see lots of Mr. Brandon tonight.
Actually, I'm just here for the comic relief. I'm going to let Ms. Jennifer Bills come up and help with these next items.
Okay, I am opening the public hearing, and we will hold the public hearing and consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-20 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, granting a conditional use permit for a 175-foot communications tower being Lot 3-A of the Bastrop Business and Industrial Park Phase 1, Block B, located at 1501 Business Park Drive, within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, setting out conditions and establishing an effective date, and move to include on the August 22nd, 2017 agenda for a second reading. Ms. Bills.
Good evening. So this is a public hearing, and it is for a conditional use permit for a communications tower. Within our zoning code, we require any publicly owned communications tower that goes over the height of the zoning district it's within to receive a conditional use permit for that additional height. So we have before us a request from the Bastrop County Emergency Operations Center that is going to be moving to the business park. They are requesting a 175-foot communications tower that will be used for their emergency operations. The base tower is 150 feet, and then there's additional antenna that go another 25 feet in the air for the entire 175 feet. In our code, the district, the zoning district for this area, they hit actually right on the line between the two districts for this lot, but the districts are zoned industrial park and light industrial, which are both allowable base districts for this conditional use permit. The tower will be going to the back corner of the existing building and will be secured, fenced off, and kept built to our codes and requirements. And to that point, we have a series of conditions that go along with this CUP. The first three are specifically permit related, receiving the appropriate permits from the city. The additional four are specific to communications towers, that they be secured against trespass, that they not conflict with any other FCC communications, and that they are secured properly against any kind of wind or other damage. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of this tower at their last meeting, and this would also, if it's approved tonight, go to a second reading on August 22nd.
Madam Secretary, do I have any citizens signed up to speak? Okay, there are no citizens. Are there any? I'll close the public hearing. Is there any questions for staff? Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'd like to say, first of all, that I'm excited that this building that's been empty for many, many years is finally being used, so I'm happy about that. I am a little disappointed that it's coming off the tax roll as a county building, but it is what it is. And with that, I move that we approve this on first reading and put it on the consent agenda at the next meeting.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and my only comment is if there is ever a place to have a tower, it would seem by your emergency building in the middle of your industrial park. So is there any other discussion from dais? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis.
Yes.
Hang on, I'm catching up. All righty, 9G, I am opening a public hearing to consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2017-21 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas to rezone lots 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the North Main Addition subdivision from neighborhood services and office to single-family 7 located at the southwest corner of Main Street and Mesquite Street within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, and establishing an effective date and move to include on the August 22nd, 2017 agenda for a second reading. Ms. Bills.
So this request is for a rezoning, obviously from these two office and neighborhood services district to our single-family 7 district, which the permitted uses for those two are single-family detached and community homes as allowed by the state. Those are the only two by right uses that don't require an additional CUP. Currently, these 6 lots are vacant. They don't have any development on them. In the area for looking at surrounding uses, you've got SF9 zoning across the street with the LCRA electric substation also across the street. To the south, you've got a childhood center that will remain in its office zoning, and then the rest of the area is all residentially used and zoned. The future land use plan calls for this area to be neighborhood residential, so this request is in conformance with our comprehensive plan. And the 6 existing lots do meet our single-family 7 requirements for subdivision, and they don't need any additional processes to be used as those lots. Planning and Zoning Commission recommended unanimously to recommend this rezoning. And the applicant's here if you have any questions.
Madam Secretary, did anyone sign up to speak?
No, Mayor.
Having no one signed up to speak, I'm now closing the public hearing. Is there any questions for Ms. Bills from the dais? Seeing none, happy to take a motion.
I so move to approve.
I have a motion from Councilmember. I have a second from Councilmember Peterson. I have to speak slowly. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Ennis,
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff,
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson.
Yes.
All righty. We're moving on to 9H. Consider action to approve Resolution R 2017-63 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving the vacation of Pine Vista Commercial Subdivision being 8.858 acres of the Bastrop Town Tract Abstract A-11 located at 2401 Loop 150 within the city limits of Bastrop, Texas, repealing all conflicting resolutions and providing an effective date. Ms. Bills.
So this request is for a plat vacation, which is a process allowed through the Texas Local Government Code to basically erase a plat that has already been recorded. So this plat was recorded in December of 2012 for the future site of the Roadhouse restaurant. At the time, they had subdivided into 2 separate lots. It's 1.3 acre lot up front, and then the 7.5 acre larger tract here. This has run afoul of the Lost Pines Conservation Plan.
You mean the Houston Toad?
The Houston Toad regulations, yes. By doing that, it threw them into a new process. But if they go back to the original 8.858 acre tract, they will be allowed to develop up to the 1 acre of that site. So this request is to return to that originally larger tract. The only thing that staff is recommending is that we would like, before the vacation is a process with the county, we're requesting that specific easements that had been originally dedicated on the plat that are there be retained. So public utility easement around the perimeter, there's a drainage easement along this side, and then an access easement for a future sidewalk along the front for the road. These will all be needed during the development process, so it's a cleaner way to get those back in place before the plat is vacated, because those will all be erased when the plat goes away.
Is it safe to assume that's agreeable with the county and the applicant?
Yes.
Okay.
And they are here if you have any questions specifically of them.
So those are going to be combined, is really?
So these easements will, the two lots will be combined, so all this lot up front and any of the easements that are on there will all go away.
And that'll give you what you need to do the development.
They need it to be one lot so they can have the portion for the...
So,
yeah.
Okay, so I'm just curious how the drainage, because I'd heard that there were some huge issues with drainage, and I was just wondering how that's been satisfied. I'm just curious. I don't have a problem with it. I'm just curious.
Thank you, Councilman. The drainage easements that would be retained by separate instrument in this area would remain in place to accommodate that drainage that I think you're speaking of. This would provide a path for runoff from properties to the south to drain through, and that follows. And I would also add, this is along Loop 150, and the reason for that sidewalk easement is to accommodate our State Park Trail.
That Highway 21 or what?
Well, it's a bunch of different names. It's
Chestnut Street, okay.
It's on it's for the trail on the way to the park.
But that's, okay, because I thought that was 21, but it's also called 150.
That's right.
Okay.
And Chestnut Streets. Make it even more confusing.
That's how we do it in Texas. You know that. Every street has multiple names. That's what we do. All right. Any other, Ms. Mills, are you done?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from the dais?
I move to approve.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a tie for second. Your choice, Secretary. Any discussion from the dais? Seeing no discussion, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll. And I'm anxious for some more Roadhouse hamburgers. Yay.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff?
Yes.
All righty. Thank you guys very much. Thank you for your patience. I should have tried to pull you sooner. Sorry about that. Okay, we're moving on to 9J. Consider action to approve. While I'm doing this, Colin, or somebody, can you get my thing up? I would appreciate it. Consider action to approve Resolution R 2017-67 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, confirming board appointments of the mayor as required in Section 3.08 of the city's charter as outlined in Exhibit A and establishing an effective date. And it's only fair to say this is not my fault. So, where we are is we had a resignation from BAIPP, and at the last board meeting, they were not able to discuss a recommendation because the resignation happened less than 48 hours before their meeting. So what I do know is on the meeting before, when they had a vacancy, they had 2 applicants, and they asked that I hold the applicant that they did not select because they absolutely wanted them should there ever be an opportunity. At the time, no one knew the opportunity was going to come less than 2 weeks later. So So that is why I am recommending Glenda Dayton and why I'm using their discussion from the July 19th meeting, because if we will approve this appointment tonight, it will allow them to be back to a full board. Ms. Dayton currently serves on the Bastrop Historical Society, and she was on the original steering committee for the Lost Pines Arts Center, and because she is filling an unexpired term, her term would end in 2019. The other is also a cleanup. This is for Place 5. I'm appointing Lisa Patterson, and it is a reappointment because she previously served on the Historic Landmark Commission, and here's the deal. The bylaws say that the mayor appoints and the council confirms, which matches our charter. Interestingly enough, in August of last year, Councilmember Ennis made the recommendation for Lisa Patterson, and Mayor Connie Schrader seconded the motion. So P&Z recommended Lisa Patterson, but there is no record of a formal appointment by the mayor, so that hasn't officially started her term. So I am trying to take what happened in July of 2016, make it formal, and that's why her term ends in 2019. And I can already tell from Mayor Pro Tem Schiff that's more information than he wanted, but they are required to have a planning and zoning person on their board. Because the press is here and everyone's always interested, this brings me to a total of 43, and you can see it's 60% new, 40, 42, and 18 for the locations, and the women are outpacing the men, but I believe when I get the alternate positions on the 2 remaining boards, I think that will all even out. I respectfully request your approval. Is there any questions? I'm happy to take a motion.
Move to approve.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes. And since we have already thank you very much, I appreciate that. Since we've already taken care of 9K, we'll be moving to 911. Consider action to approve Resolution 2017-65 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, awarding a contract for engineering services associated with the water plant and transmission main improvements project to provide potable water from well site J in the amount of $455,500 to Befco Engineering Incorporated, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents for the water plant line improvements project and establishing effective date. Mr. Job.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the design work that would need to take place for the plant out at Excess Ranch. What I'd like to do is go ahead and get this started now so we can get the survey work completed. And then if we make some decisions when we do our work plan, we can decide on the size that we need, things of that nature. But for now, I'd like to get this started so we can start the survey work to get the water routed into the city.
Any questions?
Mayor?
Yes.
Are these funds already, do we already have this funded?
Yes, sir. These funds are already allocated, and we do own 3,000 acre feet out there that will be pumping.
Move to approve.
Just in case it's a question.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Jones, a second from Councilmember Ennis. Is there any discussion from the dais? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
All right, we're moving to the ever-favorite last item, 9M, and thank you, City Manager, for putting something fun as the last item. I appreciate that. Consider action to approve Resolution R2017-66 of the City Council of Bastrop, Texas, to fund the purchase and installation of park improvements in Delgado Park, Water Street, Bastrop, Texas, at a cost of $143,479, and authorizing the City Manager to execute all necessary documents and establishing an effective date.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is the item that was approved in your consent agenda for the amendment to your budget, and I'll be paying for the playscape, restroom facilities, and things that are going to Delgado Park. I just attached a few pictures here, so it may look something like this in case the audience wanted to see. There's a second view. This is kind of how the layout would be. We would come in from Water Street. There would be a restroom here, playscape there. Maybe in another phase, we'll talk about a walking trail. Overall schematic of the playscape, the restrooms, what they would look like with the sketch, and that's it.
So for clarification, we're not spending $143,000 on the playscape. That's for
That's correct.
everything.
It's for everything. It's the restroom, the playscape, the swing sets, the shade structure, all of it.
Excellent. Any questions for Mr. Job?
So my questions go back to Jewel Hodges Park, because Jewel Hodges Park has been there quite a long time. So they are going to be fenced and have bathrooms when the community center is finished, and I just kind of want to know when that is, because it seems like it's never happening.
They have been working on it for the last 3 weeks, so they're fixing to pour the slab probably, I would bet, by the end of the month.
When is it going to be complete?
I believe it's going to be about 4 months.
I move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Jones?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schiff?
Yes.
Councilmember Nelson?
Yes.
Councilmember Peterson?
Yes.
Councilmember Ennis?
Yes.
We have no executive session. We're at item 12.
I move for adjournment.
Second.
I have a motion and a second by acclamation. We're adjourned at 9:17.
Well, I didn't say everything I wanted to, but I figure I could do that at the work. Hopefully we can get that done without me making a big deal out of it.